sad as or scary as it might be, we might have some very evil thoughts, and those thoughts pop up, and then if we believe that we're the one that created those thoughts, then all of a sudden we're judging ourselves. Like, oh my God, how could I think that? And the way I would rather experience is like, wow, where did that thought come from? That's crazy. And then almost laughing lovingly, letting that be just okay, similar to our last chapter.
Okay, so Andy, chapter 12 was an interesting one because, I very much connect this idea that you have these random thoughts that come into your mind and kind of drive you around, and it's kind of a natural process. And then I love this concept that you had about trying to think a thought before you think it, which I find just a funny paradox in a lot of ways. But what I found interesting is that you find a way to connect this to agency. Can you just talk a little bit more of how you made that connection and why?
Yeah, it was funny because even as I wrote it, I felt a little bit anxious because I was like, this isn't traditionally how people would see agency, and yet this is how I experience agency. And I think I know the reason why I feel this is because it allows me to not have to feel like I'm responsible for all the thoughts in my head. Like, as sad as or scary as it might be, we might have some very evil thoughts, and those thoughts pop up, and then if we believe that we're the one that created those thoughts, then all of a sudden we're judging ourselves. Like, oh my God, how could I think that? And the way I would rather experience is like, wow, where did that thought come from? That's crazy. And then almost laughing lovingly, letting that be just okay, similar to our last chapter. Just, it's there. Isn't that random? And I mean, it might be sad to say, but in my earlier days with Ronnie, my wife, when we were together, she would just say everything that was in her head. Like everything, just ba 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 ba, and I'd say, "Baby, baby, baby, you're polluting my head with your thoughts." Now I think it's horrible, but at that moment, that was the best I was capable of. And so, in a way, what I see is that the agency is allowing myself to have those thoughts, but not attaching to those thoughts and then making them guide or rule me. And so it's a little bit like I'm observing it, but not a byproduct of it. And that's why that's really important to me in my own life. It's almost like I laugh again at the thoughts that I would say Andy is coming up with. Wow, Andy, where are you today? Yeah.
So I noticed the exercise for this course is mindfulness,
Yeah.
which in a certain way I feel like has been beat like a dead horse when every single book around. But you use it for a different purpose. Usually mindfulness is used as a way to calm your mind and a way to get in connection with yourself and as a way to reduce stress and anxiety. But you're using it for connection. Can you just talk a little bit about that connection that you're making there?
Yeah, I think the theme that we've seen come up over and over again through our talks is that I'm always wanting to make the unconscious more conscious, or the things that we're not seeing in ourselves. So the humor is that if all these thoughts are coming up, and I assume they're relevant in this conversation, because hey, the thought came up, obviously it should be outspoken, then all of a sudden I lose agency over myself. I'm now, again, a byproduct of my circumstance, of my environment. So what I'm hoping one can start to feel into is like, wow, a thought came up because you spoke, and all of a sudden I'm now more connected to, and then I don't need to act on that thought. So it's more of a seeing these thoughts emerge and realizing, oh, this is just how it works, and I don't need to connect to that and then make it important or relevant for our conversation, unless it happens to be. A lot of people don't. A lot of people just have a thought. There's a friend I walk with, and I swear to you, like every thought that comes into his head, I feel like, wow, his brain, I've just heard his entire brain, and I'm like, wow, at the end of the conversation, we don't necessarily deepen anything because each thought pulls just to another thread. And that's also fine, but I'll see the challenge he might have, which is centering and finding connection to what's the reason that thought keeps me stuck. And that's a harder call it question to answer. Yeah.
And I noticed, at least from the neuroscience perspective, we know that mindfulness changes the brain. We know that it has very specific effects. And when you were talking earlier about creating a space between, just whatever the thing that comes to your mind is and the reaction that you have, and we talked about how that plays into potentially creating a downward cycle of mistrust and that in the relationships. It seems that all the other reasons that you can practice mindfulness, this gives just one more thing to put on the fire to say, look, this practice really is beneficial to you in all aspects of your life, including connecting to others.
Yes, most certainly.
Great, thanks.